Today's Furry Girl Profile triple feature first drops us off with their yellow hustling feline whose best friends get to call him TC, Top Cat. This classic Hanna-Barbera series ran from 1961 to 1962 for merely one season.
Hold me in your arms a little longer, stronger.
Our first ever featured lovely lady out of this series was named Honeydew Mellon. She was voiced by Sally Jones. She made her only appearance in episode The Golden Fleecing. The episode centers primarily on TC's blue-round friend, Benny the Bull. When Benny tells him he believed he was being followed, he agreed to help him. Trying to trip up the stalker, TC accidentally tripped up Officer Dibble, who was already in a foul mood. There was a particular mob stirring up a lot of trouble recently around town. For Officer Dibble, if he could catch them, that would mean a promotion. That also meant he wanted TC and his gang completely out of his way. But Destiny had other plans when it was unveiled that Benny's stalker was trying to give him $2,000 for his accident he had 3 years ago. But when TC makes himself the official manager for Benny's money, that's when him and the rest of the gang end up at the Pink Palm, where Honeydew performs as a singer. Doing only what Top Cat does best, he bribes their way into a reservation with the money. Sure, they managed to get a table, but then again, the establishment had plans on bleeding them dry anyway.
Show 'em our special menu, Charlie. Know what I mean?
I got you. Live ones.
Benny was completely smitten with Honey from the moment he spotted her, to the point he couldn't think of anything else.
We'll all have what Mr. Ball orders. What'll it be, Benny?
Honeydew Mellon.
No, dinner, Benny, dinner. What do you want for dinner? Champagne, filet mignon?
Honeydew Mellon.
The thing about Honey is that she might have looked like a cute little strawberry snack, but she was very bad for Benny's health.
In that case, I'll just go over and make them feel at home.
From the moment she hit the table, she put on a sweet and bubbly persona, just so she can manipulate the high roller of the night, which was Benny.
I can't wait for you to meet my mumsy and daddy.
He was much too love-struck to see that she was playing him. Fortunately, TC was beginning to see right through her, but she eventually decides to play dirty and have the waiter pull him away to a mysterious call. Then as he goes to take this phone call, he makes the strange mistake of leaving the money on the table. She turns the money over to Benny for safekeeping, then walks right out the front door with him. The next day when TC meets with Benny again, we find out that he did indeed play poker with Honey and her guardians last night. And the worst fear was realized. They jacked him for his last $1,800. TC calls the boys back for a meeting and sends Benny on a quick errand while they gathered up any money they could. The group doesn't tell Benny their real intentions of getting his money back, likely because of his conflicting interest over Honeydew. But he was going to lead them to where she lives, and the rest of the group was going to play along as his relatives. Once they arrive at the hotel, Benny heads up first while the others finish formulating their plans. TC eventually arrived alongside Spook and Choo Choo. As soon as a game of poker was brought into the conversation, it became apparent quick, fast, and in a hurry that Honeydew's momsy was not some fragile old lady. She was dealing out cards like she had done it her whole life.
There's no telling how long it'll take to to finish that game.
2 hours later, back down on the ground level, Officer Dibble runs into Brain and Fancy. When Dibble shows Fancy a picture of the suspect, that's when we learn the truth about our Honeydew. She was a part of the criminal con artists he was chasing, only in the picture she was wearing a wig. Meanwhile, back in the hotel, things begin to get heated when TC manages to win back Benny's $1,800. The jig is finally up when Momsy, also known as Old Lady Perkins, takes out the steel and points it to TC's back. Honeydew is no longer pretending either, as she held him and Benny at gunpoint towards the fireplace. With Benny's popcorn near his foot, he will soon then kick it into the fire. The noise distracts Honeydew long enough for TC to disarm her and retake control of the situation. Honey and her people make their grand exit off screen, as they're escorted to jail.
My baby, see my fling and your heart's done gone out.
On our second half of the video, we focus on Tom from Tom and Jerry. When he's not tormenting Jerry, he's usually doing his second favorite pastime, which is chasing women. Tom has always been a bit of a playboy, and giving credit to where credit is due, he is a pretty smooth character. Over the course of his existence, he's had a lot of love interests that have come and gone throughout the series. A lot of those relationships likely would have been successful had he literally not had one small problem: a little brown mouse named Jerry. Toodles Galore is by far Tom's most recurring love interest, though she never once broke him the way he was in 1956's Blue Cat Blues. Decades later, Blue Cat Blues is still one of the most arguably talked about Tom and Jerry episodes because it was highlighting suicide on top of heartbreak. Unlike most episodes where Tom chases Jerry, this one played out more like a scenario of a best friend trying to convince another best friend that the woman he was so madly in love with was no good for him. With Jerry narrating in the background, he flashes back to how things were good between the two, at least until the she-devil walked by.
From the very beginning, there was a strong magnetic attraction between them.
This pretty kitty and one-time unhealthy obsession of Tom's had no speaking roles, and her eyes almost always stayed glued to the viewer. Before we go any further though, there's a favorite word going around in 2020. It's called simp. It's a term used more so to describe a guy who will say anything or probably do anything to get in favor with a female. Usually whenever this word is brought up, our favorite Blue Jay, Mordecai from Regular Show, is used as an example, because there used to be very little lows he would stoop to in order to get a female to like him, primarily with Margaret. It almost seems as if the world hasn't taken full note of the two romantic sides of Tom. On one side of the fence, when the story decides not to focus on Tom being completely obsessed with the girl he decides to chase, we get to see a more charming and slicker side of him. But when the story calls for it, that's when we get to see a more desperate Tom, who has no problem selling every ounce of his dignity just to be loved back.
I tried to stop it, but it was no use.
At least when Tom decides to make a fool of himself, there's generally some mutual attraction and some mutual respect. With this particular female, however, there was zero. She both figuratively and literally made an ass out of him. In other words, she made him look stupid. And there was only one way for him to go in this relationship, and that was to go crashing down. In this particular episode, Butch the Cat, Tom's usual rival for Toodles' affection, got bumped up from Alley Cat to the rich rival next door. The moment he came into the picture, whatever little minuscule chance Thomas had with the white cat just went completely up in flames. His first mistake was even trying. His second mistake would be trying to win her over with gifts. Now there's two words to describe a female like this. One starts with a G and the other one starts with a B. Unfortunately, because of G, Tom's little wallet wasn't going to be able to compete with Butch's bank account. But he was determined. When he couldn't beat the floral wreath, he tried to give her perfume. And when he tried to give her perfume, Butch delivered her an entire truck full. The next step was jewelry. He gives up all of his life savings just to buy her a diamond ring. Unfortunately, the diamond is so tiny, you needed a magnifying glass just to see it. But then she decided to be thoughtful enough to shield both her and Tom's eyes, because Butch had a diamond too. It was so big and shiny, it could blind him.
312 monthly payments at 112% interest. It cost him an arm and a leg, but he willingly sold himself into slavery.
In other words, Tom had it so bad for her that he willingly ruined half of his life just to buy an old busted up jalopy just to impress her. Only for seconds later for it to be mowed down by Butch's car. Butch's unnecessarily long, luxurious car that she did not hesitate to get into. The car was the last good hand Tom had to play, and when that got defeated, he started drinking heavily, with the milk filling the role for alcohol. He was so drunk that Jerry had to save him from drowning in the gutter, though what happened next Tom probably wished he didn't. For the final nail to his heart, she suddenly went and got married to Butch, and that's how we ended up back at the train track. But if you felt bad for Tom, there was no need, because soon he would have company. Jerry soon pulls out a picture of his love interest, whose name is Toots and looks identical to Tom's. She soon also rides off in a car with another guy having just got married. Tom makes room for him on the train track, and so ends this not very funny episode of Tom and Jerry. We jump on over to 1990's Tom and Jerry Kids for our last featured lady. Tom has lost in the game of love plenty of times, and in this series it definitely wasn't going to be the last. Our last girl isn't nearly as bad as the white cat from Blue Cat Blues, but she definitely led Tom the wrong way. Her only appearance was in Sugar Belle Loves Tom, Sometimes, a title that is pretty self-explanatory. The episode opens up with the viewer getting a glimpse at the dinner table. It was one of those usual plot lines where Tom has to protect the table from Jerry or else he's getting the boot. And surprise, surprise, Jerry discovers the table pretty quickly and destroys part of it before Tom gets a handle on him. Halfway into the episode, a cute caramel-colored kitten named Sugar Belle becomes his undoing. This little Southern Belle was voice played by Kath Soki.
And the way you handle that pesky little mouse just sets my heart aflutter.
As a reminder, Tom's love life is a chink in the armor Jerry must exploit. It didn't take long for him to take advantage of the distraction, and it didn't take Sugar Belle no more than 2 seconds to find another guy to play with. The girl was a frickin' tease. And so, it came down to keeping a roof over his head and chasing a girl. He couldn't have both. But that wouldn't stop him from trying, as Jerry ate up everything like a bottomless pit. And when the tiny menace did get caught, he knew exactly where to redirect Tom's focus to. Right back outside with Miss Sugar Belle and Beauregard. He once again dashes outside in order to stop the pair from making out, and well, that earned him a swinging. And this love triangle continued to be one-sided. As you know, there was going to be a price to pay from his master. Jerry completely obliterated the dinner table. And so, they both get put out. It was there he soon unfortunately saw his love life rolling away from him.
You have more style than any cat I've been with lately.
In the end, Tom lost everything, but it wouldn't stay that way for long.
You must be the best mouse catcher in the county, and the handsomest too.
It seemed as if Tom could get a happy ending for once. And so ends our video. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Furry Girl Profiles. If you liked today's video, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe for future videos. My name is Jawbreaker, and I thank you for watching Playfur Cinema.